Clause 7, and bring about a disposal of it, which, if the mind had been sound, would not have been made. This final clause made me wonder if there were someone with a sound mind I could compare with my father. I found one in the person of my late mother who predeceased him. My father and I were only children. When she died, she had 6 surviving siblings and 20 nieces and nephews, all closer in blood than his second cousins. Despite my disappointments to her, she would not, I believe, have had a problem comprehending or appreciating the claim her only child and grandchild would have. Further, considering the facts of my bad luck with my career and health, she would not for a second have considered doling out monies to her siblings, nieces or nephews, over her own flesh and blood. Going a step further, basing my comparisons on people I knew, I cannot imagine any of my 12 aunts and uncles on my mother's side ignoring their own children and that moral responsibility of no small importance. There's more I could add. I have 25 single-spaced pages of narrative describing and categorizing things internal to estate documents and correspondence, things extant in correspondence to me and others, and things, unfortunately, only I am aware of, but which I prefer to think of as empirical observed evidence, not merely hearsay. In fact, based on reading my lengthy correspondence with them over a couple years, both of my attorneys acknowledged that my late father very likely had NPD, so I believe I'm pretty convincing. However, because my father's NPD was not officially and clinically diagnosed by a psychologist during his lifetime, none of these facts are relevant or admissible for consideration, even in negotiating a settlement with the family members who enriched themselves due to his financial incapacity and their own greed and ignorance, though their actions impoverished a trust I am sole beneficiary of until I die. As I noted at the beginning of the first of these videos, Vaknin says, quote, therapists are being fooled by smart narcissists, end quote. However, as I noted, there are no doubt hundreds, maybe thousands of self-educated people who have lived with a narcissistic parent and can identify with near certainty a narcissist standing in front of them, or the one seen on TV every day. I've not researched the following, but I believe my comparison valid. First, after Alcoholics Anonymous became well known, I imagine more people in the general lay public were able to identify an alcoholic. I have known 3 alcoholics personally and would find it absurd if a court did not take as truth the word of multiple family and friends that a certain person is or was an out-and-out alcoholic. Alcoholics usually don't go to a doctor after a certain point in their lives. Does that invalidate the reality or severity of their affliction? The same goes for a second group, people with anorexia nervosa. After Karen Carpenter died, general and public knowledge of that disorder and the ability to know when someone has it increased dramatically in a relatively short time, and that was decades before the internet. I believe we are in the middle of a learning curve on NPD. A YouTube search for narcissistic personality disorder reveals over 174,000 videos. Google returns 624,000 hits. No, not everyone who cries NPD should be believed, but again, 1, things in the estate paperwork and depositions should catch someone's attention, and 2, lead to a curious examination of evidence in his personal correspondence with me and others, And 3, that should lead to a more curious and eager to know and get to the truth questioning of the facts. Instead, my civil suit floundered because my lawyer said evidence of capacity was the word of a bank teller who saw my father for perhaps 10 minutes every other week for 3 years when he cashed a check, and the word of a doctor who saw my father in a recuperative hospital focusing on his terminal cancer for perhaps 10 minutes, not quite every day, for 6 weeks only before he was moved to hospice. This same doctor put my father on Ambien, yet had no idea, like my father's estate attorney, he was dealing with a pathological liar presenting a 24/7 act. Neither the bank teller nor the doctor probably had any idea what covert narcissism is, yet their word about my father's capacity is more important than mine, based on my 55 years as his son and having attained a level of education enabling me to understand and make valid connections between disparate fields. If you don't know about covert narcissism, please watch the video, The Covert Narcissist, on Narcissism Survivors channel. After a year of reading my input, my lady lawyer said my case was weak because, as just explained, the NPD was not officially diagnosed, and there were the 2 individuals, a bank teller who cashed checks for my father for 3 years, and a doctor who knew my father for a month and a half, who could testify to my father's capacity in his inter vivos gift, quote unquote, even though what I know is the truth. It was the result of NPD in general, and in particular, a need to obtain ego-boosting praise at the literal expense of his own flesh and blood's survival. Stay tuned.